Today on the LA Food Podcast, which LA restaurant was named one of Bon Appetit's best new restaurants of 2024? What's the secret to Chef Josiah Citrin's longevity? And which famous Los Angeles fruit did Tejal Rao dedicate an entire New York Times column to? Father Saul's with us to discuss all of it, in addition to the pros and cons of guest chef dinners, the magical world of restaurant music playlists, and a round of bad idea, horrible idea featuring vegan food festivals, insane customized drinks, and a new LA Times seasoning rub? In part 2, we're joined by olive oil specialist Lisa Pollack of Corto Olive Oil, located in Northern California. We do something a little different, and I actually hand the reins of the pod over to Lisa so that she can treat us to our very own olive oil master class. She teaches us what to look for in good olive oil, what makes the difference, and critically, how to best use it within the context of our own home kitchens, dear listener. On a personal note, Corto is an awesome company. Their Truly olive oil has blessed many an ice cream scoop in our house. I hear that they've also recently added a Calabrian chili version to their roster. I highly recommend checking them out online and stocking up. As always, please consider leaving us a rating or review wherever you listen to podcasts. It's super appreciated, dear listener. I'm your host, Lucas Servodio, and without further ado, let's chow down. Dear listener, I made a deal with my wife. She let me start a food podcast and eat ungodly amounts of noodles, pizza, sandwiches, and more under 2 conditions. One is that I never utter her name. The other is that I find ways to be healthy outside of my work in food. Being the fantastic partner I am, I found a few ways to up my health game. I exercise almost every day, I try to sneak in salads for lunch whenever I can, and I only ever snack on healthy foods. The macadamia nut has become an essential part of my daily routine, with the best omega 6-3 ratios in the nut game, 8 times better than pistachios and 20 times better than cashews. At houseofmacadamias.com, they've got a bunch of different macadamia products that you can enjoy, like savory and sweet snack packs and chocolate-covered snack bars. One of the problems with macadamias I've found is that they can be expensive, but I'm solving this for you, dear listener, because as of today, all you've got to do is head to houseofmacadamias.com and use code LAFOOD to get a 10% discount on a healthy snack that also happens to be delicious. So what are you waiting for? Head to www.houseofmacadamias.com/discount/LAFood and go nuts. Welcoming back the newest subscriber to the LA Food Pod on both Apple and Spotify, it's Father Saul. Father Saul, how you doing today, buddy?
I'm doing great, man. Got to fact check you. I'm not on Apple Podcasts. You're missing a subscriber there.
Wow. You just started a new account just to give us a new subscriber.
Yeah, why not? We'll boost those numbers way up.
Yeah.
Well, like 20% boost in your overall listenership with one more person?
Hey, no, I think actually Apple does better than Spotify. Would you believe it?
Oh, I actually would not. Maybe I did not realize that Apple still had a stranglehold on the podcast game like that.
I mean, they literally invented the podcast.
It's true. But I mean, the fucking playback is so much. Go listen on Spotify. We're not sponsored by Spotify anymore, right?
No.
Were we
that ship has sailed.
Okay. Well, still, Spotify is where it's at.
Yeah. No, we can talk all the shit we want about Spotify now. They listened to one episode of the podcast and we're like, we're done sponsoring those guys.
Losing money on these bros.
Anyways, enough about that. Saul, you have any good eats this week?
Good eats? Man, not really. I've just been heads down at work. But the best I've got are sponsored lunches at the office, which are not always bad. We had some Indian food, which is, by the way, a weird choice for a midday meal at an office, because you have some chicken curry and korma and you want to go right to sleep. But no, man, tell me about your adventures.
That reminds me, my former boss at one of the jobs I had thought he was doing something really nice for me one day for my birthday, for bringing me to an Indian buffet. Dude, that was a massacre for productivity.
It's dangerous, man. I learned this way back in the day when my mom, before soccer practice, would make me like spicy Pakistani food, and then
Nah.
I'm running like for like fucking full length fields with just my stomach burning, and I was like, "There's a real relationship here that I've learned early in my life that I cannot mix these two."
Imagine how good you could have been.
Exactly. Without that slowing me down for years, I was destined for greatness.
Yeah, yeah. Good food we've had. We went to Bar Chalou in Pasadena last night, which I actually think was one of the best new restaurants on one of these lists we've recently discussed last year.
Hmm.
It's in this awesome space near the Pasadena Playhouse. It leans sort of towards Spanish food, but it's really weird. Like they do things like really inventively, but in a positive way, right? We had some like, really nice jamon iberico. We had a really nice like snap pea dish with chorizo that actually somehow ended up tasting like a Big Mac, but like in a hot way. Really, really cool menu. I highly recommend it for the next time you're in LA.
What kind of food is that?
Okay, so purportedly it's Spanish leading, right? Like
Oh, okay,
they
gotcha.
they serve like pan de cristal with like bocarones. They have like, an heirloom tomato toast that's supposed to approximate pan de tomate, right?
Yeah, yeah.
But I think that they have some like swings on that menu too, which almost like make it the Spanish cousin of Poltergeist. I think it has been described as like chaos cooking, actually. So
Oh, wow.
pretty interesting stuff. I highly and you know what? The vibe is cool in there. It's like very moody for a Pasadena restaurant. You almost feel like you're in West Hollywood. Then you look around and it's definitely a Pasadena crowd, like a little more suburban, but I like that, it's a little unassuming.
Look at that. Pasadena getting on the map with some cool concepts. I like that.
Yeah, no. We love Pasadena. We love a good Pasadena night. What else have I eaten? I feel like there was something else I ate recently that. Oh yes, I went to lunch at Wovo, the pasta place owned by the same people as Sugarfish,
Ooh.
Kazunori, and Hi Ho Cheeseburger, and Ma too, by the way. And it is just outstanding. I mean, they've really nailed sort of the quality pasta, but doing it relatively affordably and not quite in a fast casual setting because you are still like going to a restaurant, getting a menu and sitting down. But there is something like Kazunori-esque about it. Like you're going to a bar, you can like see the theater of people cooking the pasta in front of you, and they literally bring it and finish it at the table in front of you, and it's pretty cool. They have like regional specialties. They have a section of the menu that's Bologna style pastas, a section of the menu that's Roman style pastas, and then just a section that's classic style pastas. It's not gimmicky. It's done by real Italians in partnership with other folks as well. But the guy who served us was this guy who was like so Roman. He was so up to date with like all of the travails of the AS Roma soccer team, which had just sacked their manager that morning. So we had a wonderful talk about that. It was a brilliant experience. Highly recommend it, even for the non-soccer fans.
I was gonna say, now I know how they got you. That's A plus service right there. But that's also the way you get right into Luca's pocket, or Luca gets into your pocket more accurately. Talk some Roma soccer.
Yeah,
That makes me think like what you just described. I didn't realize Sugarfish and Matu and Wovo were all under the same banner.
they are.
At some point, we should do like a power ranking of the best restaurant groups or networks in the city, because that's an impressive list.
Dude, that is a really good idea. Power ranking, like between like Last Word Hospitality, which has Found Oyster, Barra Santos, Queen Street, all these places. Compare that to, this group. There's, Jackson Cobb's group as well with Osby, Gemma, and a bunch of other restaurants. This could be quite the interesting episode.
Yeah, infatuation, if you're listening, back off. Back the fuck off. We got this one.
Brant, so help me God, if I see a list of the power rankings of the best restaurant groups, I'm coming straight to your door, buddy. Okay, look, speaking of lists, we kind of fucked up by not mentioning a list that came out last week, but in our defense, it dropped online last week, but it only hit newsstands this week, and that is Bon Appetit's Best New Restaurants list, which also included one Los Angeles restaurant, Silver Lake's Azizam, a beautiful Persian fast casual concept that used to be a pop-up and just became a brick and mortar earlier this year. Saul, what do you think? Are you a fan of Persian food?
I know Persian food only in its relative inferiority to South Asian food, as we've discussed. No, I'm joking. I've come around a lot on like Persian and like East Middle Eastern cuisine this past year or so, I will say. So excited to check out Azizam, excited to talk about this list and kind of some of the thinking that went into it, because I thought this was a great I'm really happy we're talking about this, and I think it has a lot of interesting takeaways for us as we dive into how they went about their work.
Yeah, so okay, I'll say a couple of nice things about Azizam. We went there for a casual lunch earlier this year, and I walked away with 2 sandwiches. One was their kuku sabze sandwich, which was, the sandwich that is made with a really, really green verdant frittata type thing. It's like an egg-based sandwich. And their other sandwich, which is a beef tongue sandwich. They're 2 really sort of traditional, like Persian sandwiches.
Was that sandwich one of the top 10 from your list last year, or am I mixing it up?
The kuku sabze was, but from Atari Persian Deli over in Westwood, which is kind of
My
like
bad.
it's like, no. This is very, very astute observation. The only issue is that's like an old school spot. This is like the new school take on it. And it was very good. I don't think it's quite at the level of Atari's based solely on preference, like the one at Azizam is a little more chefy. Like they use like nicer bread objectively, right? They use fresher herbs objectively, but there's something about the construction of the Atari one, which is in this like gorgeous, crunchy baguette. The frittata is like perfectly packed in there with just some run of the mill mayo, pickles, tomatoes. It's just like simple, and personally I prefer it. But the Azizam one, the thing about Azizam is it's way more than just a sandwich shop. They have really good dips, really good plates as well. And I wasn't one bit surprised to see it on a list of best new restaurants, but this is a really big get for them. So kudos to Azizam. What you referred to, though, is that one of the people that was responsible for this list, Kate Casson, went on the Taste podcast with Matt Rodbard and really got into the details of how this list came together. And it was a pretty fantastic interview, wouldn't you say, Saul?
I mean, yeah, this is exactly what we love, right? It's playing right to the crowd of this podcast because the This Is Taste podcast hosted by Matt Rodbard. First of all, everyone go listen. I know we're not supposed to do free ads for other podcasts, but a great
So, what the fuck, bro? Just kidding. We love the Taste podcast. We subscribe on both Spotify and Apple, right, Saul?
One of us does, at least. I'm on Spotify, though. I'm on Spotify, Matt. Don't you worry. No, a legitimately great podcast. Matt does a good job of hosting, and this was such a great conversation to have. Dude, to the point where I was like, we're going to dive into the conversation they had and how Bon Appetit went around picking their best new restaurants in 2024. But it really made me think, like, dude, why haven't you been kind of getting out there and like interviewing people about their processes more? We've gotten into this more and more with the LA Times 101 taco list this year. I feel like that, like, people have heard our takes on the lists of the food world and their flaws. And I am just so ready to be hearing directly from the folks behind the scenes about it. And I will say, as we'll talk about in a second, just gives the list that much more authenticity, legitimacy when you're like, okay, this is what they were considering. That makes sense. These are maybe the like limitations of that approach, but you can understand the trade-offs, right? And I love that conversation a ton.
Are you saying that my takes are unqualified?
I wouldn't dare. I wouldn't dare, because mine are only as qualified as yours. So I gotta hold my corner here.
Look, I will say we have done that with the Infatuation, by the way. They've
Yes.
come on and they've talked about how they put together their best new restaurants list. And we absolutely love those conversations because it provides insight to an otherwise very contentious thing, which is these lists, right? Without context, like, these lists are just catnip for people who like to go in and disagree with things. To your point, Saul, I absolutely love this interview, but let's dive into it. What exactly did you appreciate about what Kate laid out in her conversation with Matt?
Well, she just went step by step through how this list comes together for Bon Appetit. And if I'm not mistaken, I think Kate, and correct me if I'm wrong, and apologies if I'm wrong, I think she's been running this process at least the last 2 years. At least she like referenced this year and last year, and when describing this process, where, between March and March of each year, they go and essentially create a huge spreadsheet of all the new restaurants that have like sort of like a compelling background and story and that they might want to check out. Interestingly, she and their, I think, head food editor then go through and look at menus, Instagram, and like the background story behind restaurants to figure out where they should focus their energies in terms of where to visit. Mm-hmm. I mean, it makes a ton of sense, because for an outlet like Bon Appetit versus maybe like a Michelin, the capacity and resources is somewhat limited, right? Mm-hmm. And I'm pretty sure for the most part, they only visit the spots they end up choosing maybe once.
What I understood is that she herself went once, but then other team members revisited perhaps? So, like,
Sure, maybe as they were narrowing.
as a team, they visited multiple times. That was my understanding.
Yeah, but I thought that made total sense, both in terms of narrowing down and also, I mean, it's interesting to like look at a restaurant from afar, right? Look at a menu, look at a story, look at an Instagram, and try to kind of find places that are percolating up some interesting concepts, right? And are the places that seem like the hot spots. Yes, they were like, hey, look, if someone's going through town, like we will let them know to go check out our restaurant. But in terms of narrowing their scope, that made a lot of sense, and to balance like where you do the most, like the must visit spots. And then what she described, which I really appreciated, was because especially Kate is only able to go once, having some like flexibility around how you gauge service, right? Because if a judge only goes once to a place, you can't test for consistency in the same way, right? But you can test for like vibe, you can test for overall, like, obviously quality of the food. She has like 5 to 8 dishes. She always gets dessert, a cocktail, both alcoholic and a non-alcoholic drink. The whole process made a ton of sense. And I just really appreciated how she's like, look, I came from restaurants. I know every service isn't perfect. So there is some like forgiving understanding if they like don't ask you about your allergies in the perfect way, or if they might forget something. Like, I think that's a totally reasonable standard
Yeah.
for how you go about kind of gauging, and it elevates what's most important, which is like quality of like menu, concept, food, and then like the kind of excitement and vibe of a place.
Yeah.
And I really appreciated all that. What else did you get from it?
Hearing how the sausage is made, like, humanized it in a way where it was like getting to see behind the scenes almost made it seem like, okay, this really is not a perfect science. There are elements of science to it. Like, for example, like she went into detail about like the spreadsheet and stuff. And I was like, oh my God, I would absolutely kill to see that spreadsheet. Right. But like, yeah, to the points you just elucidated, like the fact that they can only go a couple of times or once even to the restaurant, they're not getting every single dish on the restaurant. They realize that there's like a margin of human error that comes into the experience. And the fact that they sort of acknowledge that it's impossible to get to all of the restaurants, right? Not to mention, there was a great question that was like, what happens if a restaurant closes in under a year? Which like is a real thing that's happening these days, right?
Yeah.
So I think it's just a reminder to me that like when these lists drop, there's just as much art as there is science. I think sometimes like we get caught up in thinking it is science, it is objective, like it's a ranking and therefore it's scientific. But no, like we should almost take this as like, not to get cheesy, but like almost like a portrait of the best new restaurants overall in America, right? Almost like an impressionistic portrait as opposed to like a hyper realistic one, if that makes sense.
Yeah, which is a totally reasonable standard to look
Yeah.
at, and provides a valuable sort of finger on the pulse, right? Of like where exciting things are happening and what those exciting things look like, what chefs are trying in different places. I will also say, so I went back a couple of years on Bon Appetit's best new restaurant lists.
Yeah.
A couple interesting things. One, they don't seem to have a set number they have to get to, right? Like back in 20, like I think there was like maybe 20 or something in 2023 or 20, like something like that.
No, I think it was this year there was 20. Last year there was 24, for example. Yeah.
24. That's right. Yeah, yeah. And back in 2019, there were 50, right? They actually had a big list of 50. And then they did something that I really hope they do again. I went and looked. 2019, they had 50 most exciting new restaurants in the US, 50 best new restaurants. Then they went back and said, how are our best new restaurants 2019 performing today? And I thought that was like, I was like, oh, this is the best, because you can
That's
go
great.
and like see how like, but the one, you can like track the progress of the restaurant. You don't forget about it
Yeah.
after it's recognized for the first time. And you can kind of like gut check how your process went.
Yeah.
And I really love that.
Dude, Food and Wine should do the same thing with their best new chefs. It reminds me of this thing that The Guardian does, The Guardian like soccer pages. They every year they like release a list of like the best young talent, right? And it's like some of them go on to be like, Jude Bellingham, and others go on to like retire at 22, right? And they check in on it like 10 years later or something like that. And it's fascinating to see how the journeys have progressed. It would be awesome to see that with best new chefs, even with best new restaurants.
Dude, no, 100%. This is my number one gripe generally when like outlets and or podcasts make lists or prognostications about what's the best or who's gonna win stuff. Like, I hate it when like I'm listening to, let's say for example, the Bill Simmons podcast, and they at the start of
Never heard of it,
right? We would never take inspiration from that. But at the beginning of the year, like back in like 2016 or 17, they would be like, hey, here's our over under for each team in the NBA and how much they're going to win. And then the season would go on and all sorts of unexpected things would happen.
They never go back to it. I never thought about that. Oh my God.
And they wouldn't go revisit it. I hate it. And so I would love for that to become a standard. Kate, I don't know if she's taking recommendations. Please do that again for this list. I hope everyone sort of does, because again, it just lends legitimacy to the whole process, and it helps people understand what they're learning from different kinds of lists.
Well, I will say, I do think the universe of people who really give a shit like this is relatively small, right? Like, wouldn't you say so? I guess you got to sort of like measure whether the juice is worth the squeeze. And certainly for people like us, it is absolutely worth the squeeze. I just wonder if the regular Joe Schmo who's going to Bon Appetit to look for best new restaurants, and that's really who they're targeting, right? They want to draw in clicks. They want to draw in new subscribers.
Mm-hmm.
If they care as much as we do, I think it's just nice to know that it's nice to know that there's a method to the madness. And I really appreciate her for laying it out in that level of detail.
Totally. I mean, just a great idea for a podcast episode by This is Taste. This is the Taste, I think.
I think
this
it's just Taste. Taste. Taste Magazine. It's their podcast. Matt Rodbard hosts it. Everybody knows it.
It is called This is Taste, for the record. Everyone go subscribe. It's a good podcast, but I think you may be right, but I would be curious about the actual numbers, because in some ways, when I Googled Bon Appetit best new restaurants 2019, and I saw one article that said the 50 best new restaurants, and then another that said how our 50 best new restaurants in 2019 are faring, I was immediately drawn to the second one, because one, I still get to learn about the list, and two, now I'm seeing it today, quote unquote, or in that future like point, I get to actually know if they are still the best places to go down the line. So I hope that folks see the value in it, and there's so much going right here, and I just found it really exciting.
Yeah, no, it's super cool, and I think it's just to circle back, really cool for Ozzy Zom too. We'll definitely have to go when you come visit. But look, I wanted to move on to another topic, which is very related, actually, and it's about restaurant longevity. Because this week, Heather Platt wrote a really good piece in the LA Times on Melisse's 25th anniversary, Josiah Citrin's 2 Michelin star restaurant. And it was a gorgeous feature of one of LA's most famous chefs. And there were a couple things that stood out to me, but anything you liked about this piece?
I mean, a ton. I liked that they went back and visited a restaurant that's been around for 25 years, right? It was like a real standby, 2 Michelin star place in LA. A couple things really did stand out about how Chef Citrin approaches the work. And I noted them down. Every penny counts, right? We hear every second counts on the bear, but every penny counts was such a key idea here. And the fact that no waste in when you are purchasing food and sourcing and shopping, and he really emphasizes shopping for the best ingredients, getting your hands and tongue, sounds weird, but like tasting the melons and the produce at the farmer's market before you buy it, and then making sure that you weighed it out exactly so you are wasting nothing. Really, really interesting. And then the quality over everything, not in service, of course, in ingredients, and constant evolution. Those are the 3 things that really stood out to me about this is not only is it of course a brilliant chef and a brilliant restaurant, but these core ideas behind it. When we were talking last week about how chefs can better navigate the particularly tough circumstances today, I thought these were really important lessons to consider. Yeah,
no, you're absolutely right. And actually, I found it interesting that Chef Josiah actually acknowledged how difficult the last few years have been in comparison to the past, like
Mhm.
the previous 20 that he had been running Melisse for, that it's really like required sort of like an intensifying of those values that you just outlined. Yeah, some great sort of like, vignettes in that story too, of like all of the chefs from his various restaurants meeting up at the Santa Monica Farmers Market and like picking through green beans for the straight ones. Sounds like a
Yeah.
fucking nightmare, I might add.
I mean, it's a lot. I mean, and certainly as you're reading it, you're like, I suppose not
Yeah.
everyone can do this, right? Like it requires such a high level of time commitment and like
Yeah.
focus commitment and all that. So like recognizing that it's not necessarily for every single person, but the core ideas,
Yeah.
right here are I think like, and the emphasis on those priorities just really compelling.
Yeah, and I think you boiled down sort of those lessons really well. I also took a couple notes on the piece in the context of how do you have a restaurant that lasts 25 years so successfully? What does it really come down to? And the way that I distilled it was similar to you. I think it's number one, innovation, like making sure that you like
Mhm.
every so often are doing things that push the envelope. You can't stay stuck in your ways. When it opened, Melisse, it was like traditional French fine dining, but he sort of like followed the
Mhm.
path of how French dining has evolved in general and innovated, borrowed from other cultures, done like that. But I love the details of like, rethinking sort of how the restaurant itself is structured and like, the design of the plates and things like that, like enhancing the overall experience. So there's the innovation factor, but then there's also the adaptation factor. And that's where it gets to like the every penny counts thing. It's like adapting to the
Yeah.
tougher circumstances. And finally, you hit the nail on the head. It's just loving it. It's the passion. It requires a certain type of person. And I was really moved to hear about, the passing of his son, for example, in 2020,
Yeah.
and, the important piece that that's played in, him expanding his empire with Augie on Main, but also it seems like a constant source of inspiration. And I think we forget sometimes when we go to these like $395 tasting menus sometimes and sit there critiquing reindeer penises, there's a lot more to it.
Your favorite ingredient somehow, which you've never had, I think. Though the number of times you bring it up makes me doubt that assumption. Maybe.
I just keep throwing it out there in the hopes that somebody will one day serve me a reindeer penis.
Yeah, we all have our dreams, buddy. But no, I think you're exactly right. And one thing I'll note, like, look, we know that each of these chefs, and we read the piece about optimism last week from Laurie Ochoa, I believe.
Yeah.
Like, it's passion behind it, but it's interesting that like Chef Citrin, like I just noting that like it's not that Chef Citrin is uniquely passionate, but it's interesting how he creates parameters right around that passion, right, and how he directs it, right. Like passion can spill out in a bunch of different ways. Like if we see in the fictionalized The Bear, passion can spill out in anger, right, and conflict, interpersonal. But in this case, Chef Citrin has said passion will be expressed by our like specificity, by our commitment to quality, and our commitment to no waste, which is critical both pragmatically and creatively, right?
And I think it was really cool too when he was saying like one of the sort of like sources for inspiration for him to keep going is like when people come up to him and are like, hey, I have this special memory from my dinner here 8 years ago, 10 years ago, 15 years ago, that maybe Chef Citrin has absolutely no recollection of, but the fact that they have that memory is like enough for him. He said it's addicting. I just thought to myself, like, dude, chefs are like a specific type of person, bro. Like for me personally, I need way more instant validation than that,
I completely agree. And also that particular quote reminded me again of Pete Wells, who in his sign-off piece was talking about how, and this is more of a critique of consumers, I think, but like they go and check out the new tasting menu and then never return, right? Like there was some idea around that. And I was like, well, this is a like direct contrast of that, where the commitment to excellence in the execution of the service and the food makes it not just like a, hey, I checked the Melisse box, but holy shit, I'm addicted to going back to Melisse and seeing what they're doing anew each time. And so that's lessons both for the restaurants themselves as well as consumers and how they approach the food. But that quote immediately made me think back to Pete Wells again, and made me feel like, look, I don't know if it has to be this way, the way that he had outlined in his sign off.
I will say at $395 a pop, it's a pretty expensive addiction.
That's a rough addiction. Yeah.
It's a rough addiction, but that price point got me thinking that it would make for an excellent steak for one of our future bets.
Oh yeah. Oh, I think it's a great spot to go to. I mean, I want to make sure. By the way, Melisse also. I don't know if it is. I should have double checked. A classic Hall of Fame restaurant, buddy. It might be on the LA Times Hall of Fame list. I don't know. I should double check. But like, it has all the features of what makes a Hall of Fame, like for and like an established institution in the city.
Yeah, you might be right. I have a feeling that because he has multiple restaurants, right? He's got Citrin, he's got Charcoal. I feel like maybe Citrin is on the 101 and Melisse is. I don't know. I'd have to look into it. But look, you're not convincing me that the Hall of Fame needs to exist, okay? Have them go to look, and I just had the chance to go to Spago, right? And they're still like I think they're in a restaurant that would probably take issue with being like shoveled into the Hall of Fame because they feel like they are still operating at the highest level and could go toe to toe with any of the other restaurants on the 101. So I'm not even speaking for me anymore, man. I'm speaking for the people.
I mean, Spago is on the Hall of Fame list. Melisse is not. But look, it's like I'm looking at the list right now. Spago is a 2019 Hall of Fame inductee, and I think it can still absolutely be included in the 101.
Yeah.
Like should it belong there? But
yeah,
it's immortalized. Melisse is not, by the way. Having done a quick check, but like I just find this is a different conversation. We'll go back to Hall of Fame one day, and you'll be convinced.
Oh, we'll get there. Hey, maybe we can get Bill Addison on to talk about his process. It's apparently my uninformed takes aren't enough for you anymore.
I would love that. We've been begging Bill to come on, and yeah, man. Look, I think just generally each time we talk about awards, like we have our established takes, right? And now we're at the point of people know how we feel about it as a base concept. And I think what we've done this year, which is great, is delve into and like try to pull as many ways as possible that behind the scenes look at processes. But we got to get to like the primary source at some point.
We got to go to Sauron, the evil eye. I'm not good with Lord of the Rings.
What? Why would you make this reference? You have no idea what the fuck you're talking about. That was insulting to Bill. That was insulting to the whole scene. You have no idea. I can't believe you even tried that.
I stopped like interacting with Lord of the Rings content when I was 13 years old. So I literally have no context for that reference. But I wanted to try it. Okay. I tried it out. Okay. We throw things at the walls. We see what sticks. All right. We're going to stick with the LA Times for the next story. Laurie Ochoa, you brought up Laurie Ochoa, and she wrote another piece this week in her tasting notes column, and she wrote about the pros and cons of guest chef dinners. Now, we're not talking about pop-ups here. We're talking about regular restaurants when they invite an out-of-town restaurateur, for example, somebody from Provence, to come to a restaurant and make a cassoulet or something like that, and the restaurant sells tickets for it, usually at quite a pretty penny. The guest chef is there for maybe one dinner, maybe two dinners, and then they fuck right off back to Provence. Now, Laurie Ochoa wrote about the pros and cons of this. And I thought it was kind of interesting, right? She said the pros include good marketing for the restaurant, the opportunity to maybe fill an otherwise slow weeknight, and the potential for diners to try food from a chef they may never otherwise get the chance to. The cons, on the other hand, include the fact that these dinners are really hard to pull off for a number of factors. Number one, they require tons of planning that oftentimes the chefs don't have. They require the kitchen teams to really be able to learn what the guest chef is doing. And they also rely on the guest chef being able to get the right products, which may or may not be available in the city where they are doing their guest residence. So, have you ever been to one of these guest chef experiences?
I was thinking about it, and I actually don't know that I can't think of one specifically. I can tell you I've had a lot of wishful desire to go to them when I see them marketed on Instagram and shit. And typically they're in LA. I'm in Seattle, and I'm like, fuck, that looks fucking good. I want to go to that. But no, I love this piece a lot. And unfortunately, I don't think I've had a memorable guest chef experience, but can't wait to take advantage of one day.
Well, you will be able to, because there are a ton happening in Los Angeles right now. It feels like every week there's several. I've had the chance to go to a couple, for example, and it doesn't always involve chefs from other countries or cities having to come over. It can be just a chef from another restaurant, and that's happening a lot. And I have a feeling that restaurants are working harder to collaborate with each other in order to facilitate these and get more butts and seats on weeknights. For example, like one random Tuesday night at Pizzana in Marina del Rey, Chef Daniele hosted Antonio Lofaso, actually from Scopa.
Of course.
And that was a fantastic meal, like they alternated courses. And that was a cool one because probably easier to pull off because Chef Antonia has restaurants here. She's local. She cooks a similar type of food to the food that Chef Daniele cooks, both Italian, broadly speaking, right? So in terms of like kitchen capabilities, it was pretty transferable. And there was an element of trying to one up each other each course, honestly. I felt it, I won't say who won. Suffice it to say, it made for an awesome meal. Also, we had Chef Santiago Lastra on the podcast, the chef from Cole, London, and he was here for one of these guest chef experiences at Meteora with Jordan Kahn. And by all accounts, that one went really well too. So it's happening a lot in Los Angeles. I'm generally a fan of it because, like we were talking about last time, really hard time for restaurants. And if they need to get innovative to get butts and seats on a weeknight, this seems like a really great way to do it.
No, I mean, I'm completely for it. And even the cons that were listed in the piece, the quote unquote cons, like I would reframe as considerations. Like they're not like they're considerations for the diner to say, hey, look, you might not be getting the exact cassoulet that is served in France or whatever, right? Like be aware of that. But fundamentally, like the idea that the chefs and the staff need to learn this new technique is great. There's a sharing of ideas. There's an excitement for diners to be able to taste this food they would not otherwise have had access to. There's general positivity for the energy and excitement and innovation it brings to the dining scene. Like to me, it's all good. One of my favorite insights on the piece was like how chefs can get nervous, like the actual like anxiety. I think in like positive ways of being like, damn, I want to show this guest chef that we can do it. And like, I'm freaking out about it a little bit, but I think that's like positive sort of anxiety as they like prepare to like, impress and invite a guest chef into the restaurant. No, I think it's like, it's all good stuff.
Yeah, no, it's really cool energy actually to be at one of these. Like, and this wasn't technically a guest chef residency, but anytime you have the opportunity to go somewhere where a chef is cooking for their peers, the energy is like on point. Like I went to a lunch a couple of months ago at Queen Street where Chef Ari was basically like working with this olive oil producer. Actually, the same olive oil producer that's our guest on the podcast today was working with them to put together a menu for peers in the industry. And Ari came out and, gave a little spiel at the start of lunch, talking about how great of an honor it was to host them, how special it was to be able to cook for peers who like do what he does. And the food reflected that, man. Like it was like lights out. And the food at Queen Street is excellent, but this was better than any meal I've ever had at Queen Street, just because you could tell that he was like doing it to impress. There was also like stakes in the air, right? Like, there was like a little bit of silence when the plates hit the tables, like everybody going down, tasting stuff in the way that chefs taste things, not in the way that like, plebes like you and I taste things. It was a cool, energetic experience. Highly recommend anytime these pop up, go. I will say, like, it just sounded to me like maybe Laurie Ochoa had like a couple bad experiences, right? Like it sounded like maybe she got like one cassoulet that was a little overdone, and she was like,
again, yeah. But it almost seemed like she needed to, because she almost like needed to balance. Like I could almost feel she wanted to be like, look how exciting this is, and sure, yes, and like communicate those considerations so diners aren't always like, this is what this chef does every time. Like they didn't perfectly execute this like iconic dish. Again, I think like everything you just described, that energy and that like opportunity to like eat food in that environment, all fucking good.
It was a little rich coming from the queen of optimism herself to have to find like a downside to this overall very positive experience. But if I may pile on, I think the one downside is, look, if you're saving all your money to go to like a Cato, right, and you want to experience Cato, and you go on one of these nights, you're just not getting the same experience, right? It's just because you're not going to get the menu that you're typically getting. Service is probably going to be a little different, right?
And also these aren't surprises typically. They're like well marketed. They're specific experiences. And if you want to have Cato, you have plenty of opportunities to have Cato. And if you want to have Cato plus guest chef, it'll be very clear. You won't. I don't think you won't. It's unlikely you'd be surprised all of a sudden that like Saul's in the kitchen. Guess what? Making Kimalu at Kato. Let's go, baby.
Dream big, bro. Dream big.
Crossover of the century.
Yeah, seriously. All right, last story I wanted to quickly bring to your attention, just because I thought it was beautifully written, and I love these like slice of life stories. It felt like a slice of life story, like those slice of life movies. Are you familiar with them?
Mm-hmm.
Tejal Rao of the New York Times wrote an article on iconic Los Angeles ... melons. Saul, prior to reading this piece, did you associate LA with melons?
I associated LA with produce.
Yeah.
Melons are included. So this is a cool, to your point, slice of life, a cool little niche topic to dive deep on.
Yeah.
I liked it.
It's one of those things where it's like, you're reading it and you're like, basically the piece is about farmer Alejandro Weiser, who is literally one of the most famous farmers here. You've probably seen Weiser potatoes on your menu. You've definitely seen Weiser melons now. Like, he's a fan favorite operating at the Santa Monica market, farmers market, and a really nice guy, by the way. He came to watch the panel that I moderated at Pizza City Fest. I don't think he came for me, by the way. I think he was just there and happened to listen to it, but he came up and spoke to me afterwards and was super nice. Nothing bad to say at all about Alejandro Weiser. Definitely nothing bad to say about his produce. It's legendary here in Los Angeles. And I loved reading about like the fanatical lengths he goes to breed these new types of melons. Apparently he's got like an untried melon that's breeding two like Uzbeki types of melons. Really nerdy shit, but I absolutely loved it. And I gotta say, once I read it, I was like, wait, melons are everywhere on these menus. Like I started thinking back on the menus I've seen recently, and like compressed melons, pickled melons, they're absolutely everywhere. So there's like a melon mafia in Los Angeles.
How about that? What I enjoyed about this piece was just again, when you choose like a specific topic, like melons in LA and Weiser Farms, right? And dive deep, and you get like the nuances of like how the farmers from Weiser know exactly when the melon is ripe, and they like can hold it up and like feel it and like observe it and know exactly what to look for to know you have a ripe melon. And Tejal talked about how like when she consulted the farmers at the market about which melons were ripe, it was entirely different from her experiences trying to self-select. That's just like really cool detail and like a nice little story diving deep on a particular ingredient.
Yeah, I love reporting like this, man. Like, I think Gab Chabrana Elias does it really well too, where he takes a very specific topic. I think Karen Palmer at SF Gate also does it really well. She like picks a topic and just like dives deep, and sort of like these, kind of like weird offbeat stories that like you otherwise maybe wouldn't know about. And I just think it's like, LA has so much to offer. I love these kinds of stories. So
yeah, this is true. This is like true journalism at a high level. It's all we love it all, right? We love the list making. We love like the profiles. We love like we do. We love that.
We don't love it all. Come on, man. We have takes. We have takes.
Sure, we have takes. Yeah. Like we'll talk about a couple of them in a second, but. I think this is when you think about high quality journalism and how it can explain your context, right? And explain where you live in a new and interesting way. Like, these are the kinds of stories that do that in a really compelling way.
Really compelling way. Okay, I said that was the last story. I lied, because there's actually one more I wanted to bring up, because not too long ago, you had wanted to discuss a story in the Washington Post about restaurant sound. And so, I was scrolling through the food news of the week, and I noticed that there was another story on restaurant sound, but this time in the New York Times. Allison Kruger of the New York Times wrote a piece titled "Why Your Favorite Restaurant Sounds Like That," and it's mostly about music. Saul, can I read you my favorite line in the piece?
Yes, it was my favorite line too. Go for it.
Wait, dude, seriously?
Yeah.
That's so sweet.
Literally. Okay. And to be clear, the first piece was on sound level, right? Like noise at restaurant, right? Which I found super compelling. That was a Washington Post piece. This is a perfect compliment and follow up to that, and super interesting. So go ahead and share your quote.
So this piece was heavily about music, right? And so this was our apparently shared favorite line in the piece. Music can also bias diners' food perception, and even background noise can change how people taste food, according to a study conducted in 2019 by Charles Spence, ... He says, play classical music and people are likely to spend more, Mr. Spence said. Play ethnically congruent music and the dishes may taste more authentic. That's crazy.
It's just like a really cool human psychology, like kind of insight. The piece goes super deep into how restaurants and particularly high level restaurants like curate playlists, including like considering beats per minute
Yeah.
and different sounds, like just really compelling stuff. Highly recommend this. I know it's going to be in the LA Food Stack this week. So make sure you subscribe. I highly recommend it. Yeah, no, this is like fascinating stuff. And it actually aligned some of the stuff aligned with what I feel like anecdotally our personal preferences. Like there was an anecdote from Single Thread, which is a 3 Michelin star restaurant in Healdsburg, California.
Yeah.
Which, first of all, very cool. Every table has its own speaker to create a sound bubble. Like you have your own cocoon of sound.
That is cool.
Which is crazy. And the owner plays only instrumental music. So because he feels that lyrics can intrude and take you from, quote, a subconscious experience to a conscious experience.
Not to mention, though, he got it composed by Tycho, who apparently is like a DJ that frequents the restaurant. That's fucking crazy.
That's really cool, right? I've never listened to Tycho's music, but the name is vaguely familiar. So
I do yoga to Tycho. It's that kind of music.
I can't tell if you're joking, but I will take.
No, I'm not. Wow. Literally, whenever I do yoga, I go, Alexa, play Tycho. Wow. Alexa, do not play Tycho right now. Thank you.
She listened? Okay, good. It actually like literally reminded me of my dinner at Matu in LA, just when we most recently visited. And me and Isa were talking about, like, because it was one of our favorite dinners. The vibe was on point. The meal was perfect. And kind of like 75% of the way through, we're like, are they playing Linkin Park? Why are they playing Linkin Park?
Wait, really?
I mean, it was. I think it actually might have been, and it was like, why is this like 2000s playlist on in the background? It totally does not fit the vibe of everything else. And look, it didn't ruin the meal or anything, and I appreciated that it wasn't too loud.
Yeah.
But literally, that like, why am I listening to like lyrical pop music in this environment? Like, created some dissonance. So I just appreciated the deep dive and like the behind the scenes of these decisions at like high level restaurants that are really considering it.
Yeah.
I this is one of my favorite pieces that we've highlighted in recent weeks.
Wow. Shout out Allison Kruger, who probably doesn't listen to this podcast, but maybe you will someday. Who knows? I will say, it reminded me of what I used to do. Don't do it so much anymore, but like back when I was like wooing my wife, right? And I would like cook dinner for her. I would play like Italian music while I made pasta or something. I guess I was maybe subconsciously trying to get her to like think of me as an authentic Italian.
That's actually really fucking funny that you did that. Like, and I know you didn't do it like as a conscious like persuasion tactic, but that's really fucking funny.
I think I thought of it more like trying to get in the zone. You know, like when you listen to like pump up music in the gym, if I was listening to like O Sole Mio or something like that, I was getting pumped up to like need some dough, you know?
I totally get it. Totally get it.
Great piece. Last thing I'll say on this, my favorite approach, because there are a bunch of different approaches laid out in the piece, like working with like consulting agency to like perfectly sort of pace out the night based on beats per minute. My favorite approach was actually from Brian Dunsmore of Dunsmore down in Glassell Park, where he's just like, we play an album start to finish. If they like it, they like it. If they don't, they don't. and he mentioned like some pretty cool rappers like Benny the Butcher and West Side Gun. And I was like, yeah, I'm feeling that approach.
I mean, all the different thinking behind it is super. It's super just interesting because it's a specific choice, or you at least want it to be a specific choice about the vibe of the restaurant, how they choose their music and what they play. And the Dunsmore program makes just as much sense as a Single Thread program. I'm with all of it. Dunsmore, by the way, also made an appearance in the guest chef article that Laurie Ochoa did because he had hosted a chef. Real quick aside, because I don't want to forget it. You would put in the agenda that you wanted me to name the chef I was most like interested in seeing guest in LA.
Oh yeah.
And you skipped it. I have to say this.
I know.
Buddha Low.
Oh, okay. I was not going to guess that.
I'm curious who you're going to guess. Buddha Low, the great.
I was going to guess Gagan.
Actually, literally, dude, my number 2. He was the first name I wrote down, and I was like, literally, I'm not even kidding. I had Gagan and I had Buddha. Buddha, the greatest of all time on Top Chef. Gotta taste his food. Would love for him to come to LA.
I'm more of a Jackson Cobb fan myself.
Look, my number 1 overall pick that year, so I don't disagree.
Good. All right, buddy. This was a fascinating conversation. You got time for a quick round of bad idea, horrible idea?
Let's do it, baby. Can I say real quick? I know we're going long. Why is this called bad idea, horrible idea? We need to rename this segment because we do. So I have ideas like blessed versus cursed or based versus cringe.
Oh, that's
Daddy,
good.
Daddy versus Damned.
Ooh.
Given thematically, my moniker on this podcast. I don't know if Daddy versus Damned really makes sense, and I don't know how much I want to say Daddy on a public
Yeah.
forum, but there needs to be.
You've already said it 4 times.
And I know I'm well past my credit for Daddy this year.
Daddy quota. Yeah.
Daddy quota this year. But we need to rename this. But for now, bad idea, horrible idea. Let's go.
Yeah, we do. You're right. Maybe we could get a sponsor, to like brand it,
Ooh.
and maybe we could do something like that's branded after the sponsor,
Would love that. It's not going to be our first story, I can tell you. that much.
No, these people are going to hate us. All right, look. The LA Times decided to start selling an asada seasoning rub. Saw bad idea, horrible idea.
Look, it's fine. Like getting into the CPG space for media, we talked about it before. Got to make that money. Feels a little try hard,
yeah.
Right? And as you know, as we've discussed, I don't love prepackaged seasonings myself. Yeah. I would just call this maybe a bad idea unless it hits. I mean, I hope they make money on this, but I feel like it might be a money sink.
I'll tell you right now, it's not going to hit. It's not going to hit. It's not because I'm sure that they've made an excellent product, right? The LA Times are very competent people. Well, at least the people in the food section are. I'm sure they've made a great product. It's just such a saturated space,
Yeah. It's tough.
You're going up against some big players and some like really cool, shoppy shop brands as well. I just don't see a lot of people gravitating towards the LA Times asada rub. That's all.
Yeah, the branding is pretty good, but it's just it's a tough place to break in. And again, with the thin margins of media, is this where we should be spending our time? I'm not so sure.
And with that, I would like to announce the LA Food Podcast rub coming to shop near you. No, but
that has a whole different connotation.
Coming to a massage parlor near you.
Jesus Christ.
Actually, I did want to say, you don't like pre-made rubs, but one that is actually excellent is from Botanica over in Silver Lake. They have something called Magic Dust or something. If I'm butchering it, I'm sorry. But it is fantastic. I've been using it on chicken, fish. It's heavy on like green garlic and other like really interesting aromatics. It's already pre-seasoned with salt as well. It's like the perfect seasoning, honestly.
I mean, look, I'm skeptical, but I'll try it for you, buddy.
I think you already know what your birthday gift is going to be. Okay, look, moving on to the next one. Many tabloids, including us, people, they decided to cover what Diddy is eating in jail. And it sounds like he's got access to Velveeta cheese, chicken patty hamburgers, and a $9.95 rib steak meal, among other things. Saul, I'm not sure how closely you followed Diddy's travails over the last few months. Pretty sure he's beginning to get the sense that the freak-offs were a bad idea. But upon being confronted with the jail commissary menu, do you think he would now classify it as a horrible idea?
Literally, what the fuck, dude? What the hell? You're like I basically no comment. Why would the framing that the mass sexual assault is a quote unquote bad idea until he got to Velveeta cheese in prison and now it's like, come on, dude, just like forget all this, horrible idea
by me,
just like a tragic and terrible story. No comment. I cannot believe you fucking included this.
Yeah, I was honestly just trying to get the SEO for people searching Diddy, but you know what?
That's the story we want to be associated with. That's the one. Way to go, bud.
Hey, any way to make it up those charts, Anyways, moving on to the next one. Priya Krishna of the New York Times wrote about the shoddy organization of Vegandale, a vegan food and music festival held at the Met's City Field this summer. My question for you, Saul, is buying tickets to a vegan food and music festival held at a baseball field on a hot summer day and expecting anything less than a fiasco a bad idea or a horrible idea?
Look, this is an event planning failure. The concept of a vegan food festival and music festival should be fine. Like I can imagine like the kind of like you get a bunch of like, I don't know, like folksy singers to come out. I'm for some reason I associate that with vegan. I don't know why. Like
the headliner was Glorilla.
I don't know who.
Rapper Glorilla.
Okay, interesting. Again, I won't shit on the basic idea of a vegan festival. That should be executable. Doing it on a hot day outside in New York, maybe a bad idea.
It just doesn't seem like the kind of food I want necessarily at a festival. It's like, I just good vegan food to me is fresh, right? And the one thing you can't really
Sure.
deliver is like good, fresh food at a music festival. So it just seems like a bad idea, horrible idea to begin with. It sounds like the organizers are deeply incompetent because a couple of years ago, they invited Rick Ross to headline and got a bunch of blowback because Rick Ross literally is famous for owning Wingstop, which is not vegan. So
that seems like a really easy thing. Like, oh wait, how do they fuck it up that bad? It's so easy. You can imagine. Go get some vegan like musicians.
Yeah.
What do you think?
They exist. Get Tom York. I'm sure he hasn't put any meat past those lips in years. Get him on stage.
What is are Rick Ross's fans eating vegan? I just find that hard to believe. That's why he owns Wingstop.
The Venn diagram of Rick Ross fans and vegans just doesn't seem to be have that much of an overlap. I will say though, Priya Krishna, credit to her, amazing headline for this. It was panic ! At the vegan food festival. It's incredible, right?
I mean, sure. It's funny. It's funny. I appreciate that. Yeah.
Yeah. Do you get it?
I do. Yeah. Panic at the Disco. I understand.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
I thought there was gonna be more of a pun there beyond like just panic, but it is funny. It's a funny headline.
I didn't know you see that in the New York Times font, and you kind of just do a double take. It's kind of cool. All right. The last one is also from Priya Krishna. She wrote a really fascinating piece, actually, on America's growing obsession with customized drinks and the businesses like McDonald's and Starbucks that are really trying to capitalize on it. Okay. I wanted to zero in on a paragraph, the most troubling paragraph, I might add. Miss Loza, who's someone who's in the article, visits the beverage chain Dutch Bros, which has more than 900 locations in the U.S., at least 3 times a day, in the morning for her iced cookie butter latte, in the afternoon for a poppin' boba fire lizard rebel, a tropic energy drink with strawberry juice and strawberry flavored boba, and then at the end of the day for an iced caramel pumpkin brulee brev, which she usually orders with chai instead of coffee. It is just like a treat yourself, she said. So, to me, this isn't just bad idea, horrible idea. My question is this the end of humanity as we know it?
It might be the end of Miss Loza. Please go. Please go to the doctor, Miss Loza. It's not treat yourself if you do it 3 times a day. That's just your life. The treat yourself would be the first vegetable she eats that day. I can't. I'm very concerned for her. That I cannot imagine. I can't fathom the appeal of this lifestyle. Jesus Christ. I hope she's okay.
This is amazing. All right, bro, we've run over. I'm not going to give a shitty Yelp review today because honestly, I've been a very good boy. But I hear you have something interesting to share with the class.
I did want to share this one. So this shitty Yelp review is not for me. This one goes out to John Lovett, he of Pod Save America and Love It or Leave It fame, 2 podcasts that you may or may not be aware of. John Lovett's a former speechwriter for both Barack Obama and Hillary Clinton. John Lovett, for those who don't know, was featured on this season of Survivor, the most recent season, which premiered last night. And he's been heavily involved in the advertising for the season. Literally, it's the thing Emily told me she was most looking forward to this year. Watching a 40-year-old podcaster, John Lovett, compete on Survivor. We've watched Survivor like a handful of seasons. Like it's a fun show to watch, but we kind of lost interest until John was coming through, and it's like, holy shit, a guy we kind of know, have like a semi-parasocial relationship with. This is gonna be great. Literally, she was so excited that Emily like prompted a one-on-one fantasy Survivor competition between the 2 of us. Like, we were so in. We couldn't wait. We were like theorizing how John's political background would help him navigate the game and like influence people. Dude shows up for the first episode, booted immediately. First one off the island. And literally Emily said to me in Texas morning after we were commiserating last night that it's the worst thing that's happened to her all year. So my guy, John, 1 star for you.
Half star.
Half star. Come on. I'm giving 1 star because he may come back. I have like some theories that like he could make a return, but buddy ruined my girlfriend's whole year. Can't have that. 1 star, baby.
Pretty epic, pretty epic. All right, while we're doing other people, then I'll give my shitty Yelp review to country singer Zach Bryan. Are you aware of him?
Haven't listened to his music.
One of my favorites. Yeah, I love Zach Bryan, but he really fucked up last night or 2 nights ago because he tweeted something that said like Eagles over Chiefs, which we can take issue with, but underneath it he also wrote Kanye over Taylor, which did not go over super well with Taylor Swift's fans. He was forced to issue a massive apology on his stories, and his big takeaway lesson was don't drink and tweet. So half a star to Mr. Bryan.
That's a bad one. I like doing shitty Yelp reviews for people who aren't us, man. Takes the weight off.
Good.
Yeah, it feels good.
Feels good. Yeah, feels good. All right, buddy, how do you feel about premium quality extra virgin olive oil?
Fine, I guess, if you have to. No, I'm joking. Again, can't wait to hear about this conversation. For some reason, the first place my mind went was this time when I bet my friend Ishan that he couldn't chug a whole bottle of olive oil, and then he did. We were a little bit drunk, and it was the most disgusting thing I've ever seen. It wasn't premium quality olive oil. Maybe if it had been, his next few days would have gone a bit more smoothly. So can't wait to learn a bit more about olive oil in this next conversation.
Ishan should meet Miss Loza. It sounds like they would have a lot in common. All right. Coming up right after the break, Lisa Pollack of Corto Olive Oil. Dear listener, my wife recently decided to start eating meat after more than 15 years of being a vegetarian, and being the conscientious consumer that I am, I've been looking for ways to make our household's meat consumption as high quality and sustainable as possible. That's why I'm absolutely thrilled to have found First Light Farms, a small collective of passionate family farmers in New Zealand who are quietly changing the world. Not only are they producing the most tender, rich, and succulent Wagyu beef money can buy, but you can rest assured that First Light's cattle were raised as nature intended, living it up on lush pasture, eating a 100% grass diet with absolutely no grains, no animal byproducts, and no feedlots. The result is the best tasting meat in the game, full of natural marbling and packed with omega-3 fats. If you've ever enjoyed a meal at Matu in Beverly Hills, then you know exactly what I'm talking about. Matu famously sources all of its meat directly from First Light, and the good news is that you too can have First Light Farms meats delivered straight to your door. All you have to do is visit www.firstlight.farm, where you can buy their meats and also sign up for their members-only steak club. Members of the steak club enjoy tons of benefits, including monthly shipments of steaks, access to the highest marble score meats, and, this is my favorite part, access to First Light's full library of proprietary recipes and techniques. Also, you can cook the perfect steak within the comfort of your own home. Buying good steak isn't easy, and it isn't cheap. First Light delivers the highest quality at an incredible deal, and now that I've seen the light, I'm never going back. Visit www.firstlight.farm to learn more and use the code LAFood10 for a 10% discount on your first order. Dear listener, we got a real treat today because not only do we have an entertaining episode for you, we've also got an educational episode for you. We're joined today by education and community engagement specialist of Corto Olive Company up in Northern California. It's Lisa Pollack. Lisa, how you doing today?
Hey, Luca, it's nice to see you again. Thanks for having me.
Nice to see you too. Dear listener, you don't know this, but we actually met at an olive oil tasting that happened just down the street from me at Queen Street.
That's right. And it's always a good sign when somebody tastes olive oil and gets over the hump of like, you want me to what? You want me to drink olive oil out of the cup? And then they come back for more. So here we are today.
Hey, let's just say not all olive oils are created equal. And when you've got something like this, you kind of want to go back and do another tasting. Before we begin though, Lisa, where are you calling us from?
So I'm working from home today. I work with Corto remotely because a lot of my role is set up to be able to travel and to meet with chefs and end users across the country at the event like you're describing at Queen Street.
And where is Corto itself located?
So Corto, we're based in Lodi. So we're up in Northern California. We're about 90 miles east of the Bay Area, just to orient everyone. So we're kind of like right in the heart of California Central Valley in the Delta region.
And is it the kind of place where like people can go up and visit the olive oil farm?
Right, to see it. Well, if you're driving around Lodi, certainly you'll probably come across some like beautiful fluttering, silvery green trees, and you'll know that those are the olive trees, and those may as well be some of Corto's trees, but our facility is generally closed to the public, but occasionally we'll have special opportunities, or occasionally, we'll open it up for visitors and things like that. But generally, because we're in operation throughout most of our harvest season and closed to visitors, we've opened up virtual opportunities, which are much like what we're about to do today.
So exciting. Well, I'm going to be turning over the reins here over to you in just a moment, which I don't typically like to do on this podcast. Okay. I like to be in control, but I think you're going to do a much better job of leading this tasting than the other way around. But before we do that, I just want to know, how does one get into the line of work that you yourself are in?
I know, it's funny, right? Well, really, my answer is one word, and that's happenstance, really. Like, I did not know when I was going to college that I could possibly, pursue a career in olive oil. So it was really something that I sort of came across. So when it started, I've now been working in the industry about 10 years, and it started in New Zealand. So we're going to kind of go around the world a little bit, but I was living abroad. I'd kind of gotten interested in, figuring out and learning more about where my food came from. And so I signed up for a program called Woofing, which basically creates opportunities for people to volunteer your labor to work on farms in exchange for the education to learn about whatever it is that farm is producing. So I happened to get a placement on an olive farm in Marlborough, the region that's also a big wine region in New Zealand, and just kind of showed up. At that point, I had no idea that olives were something that grew on trees. I just honestly never thought about it. It was more just like, oh yeah, an olive oil farm. Like, I use olive oil. That's cool. And so I learned a lot in about 2 weeks, as it was myself and one other woman that were kind of helping to complete this olive harvest, and worked, tirelessly for about 2 weeks to fill these bins with the olives and take them to the mill. And you fill up this giant bin, you take it to the mill. It's like quite literally all of our passion, all of our blood, sweat, and tears has gone into putting these olives in this bin. We take it to the mill, and then we come back the next day after it's been milled and turned into the olive oil. And then there was all this anticipation kind of gearing up to tasting that first sip of this olive oil that I personally helped to produce. And I still remember that when I first tasted it, I was really just confused because it was super green, it was super grassy, it was peppery, it had this bite to it, and it was just totally unlike anything I'd ever had. And so that kind of set off a whole series of events. And then from that point, I ended up moving to the Bay Area, to San Francisco, and there was an opportunity that came up to work with the California Olive Oil Council, which is a trade group that works kind of as a collaborative effort with all of the producers in California. And so that was really where I got a lot of my foundational knowledge and exposure, and really fell in love with olive oil and as a production and as, this product. And that's really then where I got to know Corto. So eventually I took a step away from the California Olive Oil Council, and then have been working with Corto now for about the last 5 years, helping them to kind of build out education and really just to create opportunities to taste and to celebrate olive oil, which is what we're here to do today.
Well, that's really fascinating. And all this talk of olive oil and passion is really getting me excited for the tasting. So you know what? Without further ado, I'm just going to hand it over to you. Let's get tasting.
Cool. So Luca, my question, I'm just going to give it back to you with one quick question before we get into this. Okay. But like, you as an avid home chef, right? Do you use olive oil, and how do you know that the olive oil you're using is good?
I use olive oil all the time, and I actually have a deep suspicion that the olive oil I use is complete shit, actually, if I'm being honest with you. I will not mention where I get it from, but it is just their run-of-the-mill house extra virgin olive oil. And I probably overuse it, like meaning I use it in cooking applications when I'm not supposed to, just because it's what I have around.
Right.
I have started using some like lighter oils, like seed oils, unfortunately, or canola oil for like more high heat cooking as well.
Yeah.
But I'm telling you, I'm not working with the good stuff at home.
Cool. So like, we're going to come back to what you mentioned about the cooking, but that's cool to hear. Is like, you don't really know, right? You think that it's good, but you think maybe it's not good, right? And so here, what we're going to go through is like really set up why we designed this is really to be like a toolkit to answer that question of like, how do I know if the olive oil I'm using is good? Well, I paid $55 for it. Like, it better be good, right? That's what you would assume. But really what it comes down to is like knowing what to smell and to taste for, right? And so that's what we're going to go through. And to really kick off that conversation, I want to just start off talking about olives, right? It's olive oil. It comes from olives. Olives really are a stone fruit. So they're in the same family with peaches and cherries and plums. And that's sort of the foundation that we're going to put into our brains to remind us, and something that we'll keep in mind as we go through the tasting, because olive oil is really just a celebration of that olive fruit, right? It's produced through simple mechanical means. You harvest the olives, you crush them, and then you separate the oil from everything else. So we want to kind of retain and celebrate all of that flavor from the fruit in the end product. And so when we're tasting the olive oil, that's what we're looking for. Is we're looking for that freshness factor. We're looking for that manifestation of all of the fruit that went into the oil. And that's what this tasting flight that we're going to walk through is going to teach us. 3 quick things that we can pinpoint that will tell us really quickly if any oil that we encounter, if it's good or if it's not. And then kind of as we go through that, we'll unpack a little bit about why that's good or why that's not good. And so when we're getting into this, we've started off olives are a fruit, olive oil, we can think of it really as in terms of a fruit juice. So like, I want to create an analogy here. Like, do you have any fruit trees in your yard in LA?
Yeah, we have lemons, Meyer lemons, and we have avocados. I guess that counts as a fruit, right?
Yeah, totally. And so like, maybe if we think about an olive just the same as we're thinking about like a Meyer lemon, but let's maybe make a jump, and it's a little bit easier to conceptualize. Let's say you have an orange tree, right? So like, if we think about olives knowing that they're fruit, the same as we would think about an orange knowing that it's fruit, and I said, hey, Luca, I want you to make me like the very best orange juice that you could possibly make. You would probably monitor that tree that's in your backyard and monitor the fruit on it and figure out when that optimum peak moment is, when those oranges have developed all of the flavor. And that's when you're going to harvest those olives. That's when you're going to harvest those oranges. And that's when you're going to juice them, because you're going to translate all that flavor from those amazing oranges into this juice that you're now about to celebrate and consume and share with your friends and family. And when you make that orange juice, that's the best it's ever going to be, kind of that day that you, freshly pressed it. And so right away, you're probably going to drink a lot of that orange juice. But maybe you want to share some with your neighbor and they're out of town and you're not going to see them for a few days. If you want to share it with them, then you need to store that orange juice properly and keep it fresh. And so it's the same idea that really feeds into olive oil, and this idea of freshness, and that it comes from 2 places. It starts with the harvesting of the fruit and capturing all the flavors we want to begin with. But then this idea of freshness, just like a juice, carries on into how it's stored, and that it's hyper perishable, right? So we need to pay attention to protecting it from light, heat, and air. And that's kind of how the tasting is set up, is that we're going to do a comparison to really understand the flavors that come from the fruit, and then understand the storage factor and how that affects this big picture of freshness, if that makes sense.
That makes total sense. And it's a really helpful analogy. And, I always wonder why my neighbors don't like my orange juice. And it's because I've been storing it, just on the floor, not even in the fridge.
Note to self, which is a perfect transition now to my jelly bean, right? So you probably found, before this podcast, right, we set you up with what is called our virtual tasting kit, which my job is all about creating opportunities for people to taste and to learn and to understand olive oil, really with the end goal that we want people, number one, to pay attention, right? Because a lot of us just kind of like, we all use olive oil, but we maybe haven't thought about it, and maybe we didn't realize that it mattered so much. So it's really all about just shining a light that like we should care. And then it's also kind of like paying attention and building this muscle for tasting. And so this jelly bean is kind of like, I call it my party trick, or it's my icebreaker, right? It's going to get us in this zone of tasting and talking about it. So what I want you to do is you're going to eat the jelly bean, but you're going to hold your nose. So hold your nose, pop the jelly bean in your mouth, and just start to chew. And what I want you to be doing, and you're going to describe this for us here, is just pay attention first as you're holding your nose to what you're tasting. And you're trying to figure out what flavor this jelly bean is. And then about now, let go of your nose and just notice what happens. And you can tell us if you have a guess for what flavor this jelly bean is.
You know what's crazy is like, I thought I knew what it was going into it, and I thought, okay, well, I know what this is going to be. So the holding the nose thing isn't going to really stop me from knowing. But the only thing I tasted when I was holding my nose was sweetness. I could just make out sweetness,
right?
But it had absolutely no dimension to it. I couldn't put my finger on what it was. It was just sweet, maybe a hint of tart. But the moment I unplugged my nose, I was like, that tastes like apple?
So apple is incorrect, but
Oh,
but you got
no,
that.
wait. Actually, can I amend that?
Yep, you can.
Is it a lemon?
Okay, so you're like still closer, and you're I think 50%. So it's lemon lime.
Okay.
So
Hey,
good recovery, good
that's
recovery. I think
something.
we're
That's
there. I'm
something.
gonna give that to you. Yeah.
I
But like
love that.
really,
At the moment I unplug my nose is actually the moment my taste buds show off just how poor they are. That's what
I
happened. Yeah.
mean, but really the point is that, when you're holding your nose, you can't really tell. And you're exactly right with what you're describing is that it's really just the sweetness. It's the sweetness of the texture. It's like what we can actually taste in our taste buds. And then when you let go of your nose, all of a sudden you're thinking like, is this green apple? Is this lemon? Or like maybe it's lemon lime, right? All of a sudden now we're trying to pinpoint exactly what the flavor is. And so this is only there not to, say, hey, Luca has crap taste buds and he couldn't tell that this was, was
They
lemon
know that
lime.
already. They already know that based on my food choices.
Really, it's just to kind of remind us that most of what we recognize as flavor is actually aroma. And so like that's why when we open up our nose, now all of a sudden we're smelling those aromas and we're tasting it and we're trying to actually taste and figure out what this is. So this comes into play when we're tasting olive oil because we learn the most right off the bat through the aroma. And so always the first step when we're tasting is to smell an oil. And then when we actually taste the oil, and we're tasting each oil just what I call neat. So we're using a cup and we pour the oil just straight up in there. And that's going to allow us to smell it. And then when we taste it, you're going to actually slurp the oil. And so you're going to do something called strapaggio, which is basically sucking in air in the sides of your mouth. And why we do that with olive oil, similar to wine, but with the olive oil, what you're doing is you're helping to emulsify the oil across your palate and you're pulling those aromas back up into your nose so that you're going to get the full picture of exactly everything that's in this olive oil to be able to tell, is it good or maybe something's off, right?
Yeah.
And so when we go through this tasting, we also sent you a tasting guide, which is very easy. And so I'm going to dictate this to those of you at home. We really tried to kind of distill it down to make it really simple, right? So that anybody, completely accessible, 3 things that we can implant in our memory that we can look for in any olive oil to immediately determine, is this good or is this not? And like for myself, I mean, I'm tasting a lot of Corto's olive oil regularly, but I'm also tasting a lot of other olive oils from all over the world just to educate myself and because I'm interested and, because, it's fascinating to kind of explore all the different flavor profiles. Anytime I taste a new oil, this is what I do, which it's a way to just sort of like filter, is this a fresh oil? Does this have all the attributes that I want? And that's what we're going to walk through. And the first thing, why don't we go ahead and just grab a sip of water to cleanse your palate? And then let's pick up the first oil, which is the one in your kit is labeled the Fall Harvest.
Okay.
And this is Corto's oil. This is the oil that we're making up in Lodi in Northern California. And this is our oil that, where it started in 2006 when our company was born. And now we've kind of grown over the years to really focus on food service. This is the oil that we make and we produce. So what I want you to do is we're going through the kit. So to first start to tasting the oil, drop the cup of oil in your palm. And why we're doing that is we're going to use our body heat to warm the oil. And then we're going to use our other hand to gently swirl the oil. And that's just going to help the oil as we're swirling it to release all of its flavor and aromas. And then the heat from our body just helps it bloom and release even more of those aromas so that we can really get a clear picture when we smell the oil of, what went into it and if it was made from fresh fruit or not. And I'm going to tell you how we can pinpoint that in just a minute. So now we're swirling it in our palms. What do you think? You think yours is nice and warm?
Is that like, yeah. Is this like decanting basically?
Essentially, yeah. Essentially, it's like if you think about like, I'm sure many of us have put oil in a pan, turned on the stove, and then you go off and you're, slicing your onion or whatever. And all of a sudden you'll be, oh yeah, I put that oil in that pan. And you're reminded probably because you smell, the aromas of that oil that the heat's helping to release. And that's kind of what we're simulating here.
Yeah.
So now let's just go ahead and stick your nose in it and just smell it. And what we want from a fresh oil is an aroma of the garden. We want something green, right? So like hopefully when you smell this oil, we want to be transported outside. So it's like herbs, grass, fruits, vegetables, something vibrant, something green. if, somebody listening has an olive tree in their backyard, or they've been to an olive grove in the fall and they've, taken an olive off the tree and crushed it in your fingers, this is exactly what you're smelling. You're smelling the aromas of peak olives, which are at their peak in October, November for us in California. And they're mostly green, right? So that's what's lending a lot of these green grassy aromas. All olive oil in the world, all quality has to start with olives that are harvested at the peak. For olives, that's once a year in the fall, just like our oranges, right? Just like that orange has one time a year when it's developed all those peak flavors. And so that's what we're noting when we're smelling this, is like the aromas of that fresh, bright grassiness. And then we're going to go ahead and taste it. And when we're tasting it, there's two more things that we're paying attention to.
Yeah.
Right away when we taste it, we'll taste more of the aromas of that fruit, but then also pay attention to the finish. What we want from a fresh oil is like a bite or a pepper in the back of our throat, and also the texture. It should never feel kind of greasy. It should leave your mouth feeling nice and fresh and clean. So let's go ahead and slurp it.
Okay.
And like right away, I taste more of that fruit, right? I get like notes of a banana. I can tell that pepper is hitting the back of your throat. What do you think?
Yeah, my eyes are watering. Honestly, it's also because like I took a bigger slurp of it than I intended, but I'm happy about it because So first of all, totally. When I smelled it, it smelled like freshly mowed grass to me, like almost what it smelled like. Yeah, some herbs as well, and then the taste. Totally getting what you just said. Would you say banana?
Yeah. When I taste it, I get like a definite, like a green banana. Do you get that?
Yeah, I get that. I didn't get it until you said it, but when you said it, I was like, oh, I totally recognize that. And then, it's this sensation of like a very pleasant, like tickle in the back of your throat almost. Pepperiness is a great way to describe it. And it made me cough, but that's simply because I slurped way more than I intended to because it doesn't drink like water because it's oil.
And that's natural. I mean, like I've been tasting olive oil for 10 years and I still often have olive oils that make us cough. It's a good thing. Like that first time I ever experienced it, again, I was confused, but that's a good thing. And then how about like the texture? Do you notice that like, it's oil, so it has some viscosity, but it should feel sort of almost like velvety and just clear off your palate and leave it feeling nice and fresh. Do you get that as well?
I do. And like right now it's like 20 seconds after I've tasted it. And I'd say it's almost like completely gone. Like it's not, there's not lingering in my mouth or anything like that.
Right. Totally. And so that's all of those things. So like the green grassiness on the nose, the pepper in the back of our throat, and then the clean mouthfeel. Those three things working together are the things that can tell us with any olive oil, okay, this is a fresh oil. And then from there, then, how I taste is then I begin to start to categorize, well, what is like the distinct flavor profiles? Like here I'm picking up some banana, there's some notes of tomato, right? Is it super intense or is it fairly mild, or kind of how can I use this with food? And like, this is the oil that we produce. The flavor profile is really kind of grassy green, and it's meant to be pretty kind of mild to buttery, right? So that it's very food friendly. And so let's keep that in mind, how we can kind of, how we've tasted all of that, flavor of the olive fruit and how that comes across, and then compare that to our next oil. And so the next oil is what we're calling and what we're labeling in this kit as winter harvest. But if we're buying olive oil, we're never going to see something that says, winter harvest. Kind of why we did this is just to differentiate, because we've put this together as like a tool, as an educational experience, right? But sort of the fact of the matter is that in the United States, the term extra virgin is something that we all equate with olive oil, that we all kind of use as sort of this guiding light to help us find quality. But the fact of the matter is it's largely not enforced, right? So there's a huge range of things that are sold always as extra virgin. But there have been studies, like UC Davis did a really instrumental one in 2011, that like over 70% of what's sold and labeled as extra virgin is actually lower grade. But for a lot of us, it's accessibility. It's all we've ever had. And so we've never known that there's anything wrong with it, right? So this second oil that we're going to taste, this is your cheap, your commodity olive oil. This is what's sold as extra virgin all the time and what's familiar to a lot of us, but it's actually not what olive oil is supposed to be, what high quality olive oil is supposed to be.
And Lisa, before we taste this one, can you remind me what it means for olive oil to be extra virgin?
Sure. So extra virgin is essentially a quality standard. And so it's a way to it's a grade, it's a way to differentiate like the world's olive oil, whereas extra virgin is the top grade, followed by virgin, followed by just olive oil, right? And so by definition, extra virgin means, it's free of defects. You can determine that because there's sort of a two-part testing protocol where it's, part of it is tested in a lab, and then it always has to undergo a sensory analysis with a trained sensory panel, right? But the enforcement is patchy, right? And so in the United States, like it's defined what it's supposed to mean, but that enforcement just doesn't happen. And so that's really why, like, there's never a short answer. Like whenever I go to cocktail parties, people are always asking me, hey, like, is this oil good? Is that good? Or like, how do I know? And it's like, I wish it was an easy answer, but my answer is always like, let's sit down and let's talk about like tasting and how to recognize it. And that's why I'm so happy that like you asked me on today, because that's really what it's all about. It's like, how do you know if the fish that you bought is fresh, right? Well, like, does it look fresh? Is it smell fresh? Kind of all of those things, or lettuce, whatever it is. And so it's the same with the olive oil. So it's kind of creating that same correlation with this freshness idea.
Now you're going to be able to tell who the LA Food Pod listeners are at parties, because they're going to be the ones sitting and sipping the olive oil, coughing and looking for greenness and freshness.
It's definitely a conversation piece.
Yeah, it's a party trick for sure.
Okay, so we've got this second oil nice and warm and opening up for us. And so now this is an example of what we don't want. And I just want to show how, the things that we're looking for: green on the nose, peppery finish, clean mouthfeel, totally different experience. And the big difference here is just the time of harvest of the fruit that it was made from. So the second one, when we smell it, you notice it's not green. It definitely has an aroma, but it's more of like, it's like a brine black olive, or it's also like, it kind of has like a harshness to it. What do you think?
I know this is a cop out, but this smells like olive oil. Like it doesn't smell green. It smells like the olive oil I buy in the store, like, which
I mean, it's true. Like,
probably means shitty olive oil. Yeah. It makes me feel like I'm cooking dinner in a hurry on a Thursday night. That's what it makes me feel like.
And it's you and me and everyone else, right? When we smell this oil, it smells like olive oil, right? Like this is what we're used to. But notice how it's not green. And the big difference is because of, the time of harvest of the fruit. Because like from the beginning of time, high quality olive oil has always been made, and it's been made from fall harvest fruit. But it's typically more difficult to harvest the fruit in the fall, and it's more expensive. So just what's happened on the large scale is that a lot of the olive oil that's produced, and the majority of the olive oil that's produced that just on a bulk scale, isn't harvested until much later in the season, when the fruit's way overripe and it's starting to break down. And that's what this one is. And that's unfortunately what a lot of us are familiar with, because, the United States doesn't have, an original source of fresh olive oil that we're all, grew up taking our olives from our backyards to the mill to know exactly what olive oil should taste like, right?
Yeah.
And so that's all what now we're trying to change as a domestic producer, and what's so exciting. But when we smell the second one, it's definitely not green.
Yeah.
Now let's go ahead and taste it. And when we taste it, it's also going to taste very different. What we want is the peppery finish and a clean mouthfeel. And the first thing when I taste this that jumps out is the texture, that it feels really kind of greasy. Do you get that?
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, very greasy, and like it's unpleasant. Like the other one was greasy. Like it wasn't greasy, but it was oil, so it was coating your mouth, but it felt, to use your word, velvety. This one feels like my mouth has an aversion to it when I put it in there. It's the thing that gets me, no pepperiness. Well, very, very slight pepperiness, I would say.
Right.
But the flavor is what really gets me. It's like it's got it's a little bitter in a way that the other one was not to me.
Yep. Yeah, it's a totally different experience. It just doesn't have the dimension. It definitely doesn't have that green grassiness. And the pepper typically won't be there, or if it's there, it's fairly mild, right? And it's really the texture that kind of overrules that. It's just like, without any of that explanation, this one is a little bit kind of unsettling. And like, yeah, you're going to take some coaxing when I'm trying to convince you to pour this over your ice cream, because you're like, oh, it didn't taste that great on its own. Why do I want to put it over ice cream, right?
Yeah.
And it's a big difference that really just comes down to the fruit that it's made from, right? And that's where that juice analogy really works. It's like, if you want to make a good juice, you got to start with grapefruit, harvested at the right time, because that's going to create all of the flavors. That's the whole experience that we're going to capture in this juice. And that's kind of where it all begins.
Mm-hmm.
So then from there, we're going to just switch gears a little bit. And now we really get that like freshness starts in the grove. It starts with harvesting the fruit in the fall. Kind of everything that we're doing up in Northern California is set up to harvest in the fall. And the way we're doing it is basically sort of a modification of the traditional method, was to harvest the fruit by hand or to use like a mechanical rake. How we're set up is we're planting the trees in like these vineyard style rows that essentially allows for a machine to harvest in the fall. So to produce fall harvest quality at scale, right? So that's kind of the starting piece though, is just getting the fruit off the tree, capturing all that flavor.
Mm-hmm.
Then once the oil is made, there's a whole other component of freshness that has to do with how it's stored. And so that's what we're going to taste in the next two. So are we good to keep rolling?
Yes, I'm excited.
Okay, so I'm just taking another sip of water to cleanse my palate, and let's pick up our third oil here. So what this third one is a different oil than the first one that we tasted, right? This is another fresh oil, but here it's an oil that just came from one type of olive. And so here's where I want to kind of just level up the conversation a little bit, where it's like, with all olive oil, it's all about freshness. That's kind of the first point of entry, to make sure that we're tasting, you know, the best attributes of that olive and all of this manifestation of the oil that we want. But then there's a huge variance in style and flavor profile with olive oils. And a lot of that comes from the type of olive that it's made from. So a lot like wine, when we think about like a Pinot Noir versus a Zinfandel, right? There's different flavor notes depending on the grape that they're made from. We have the exact same thing in olive oil. And so this oil we're going to taste, just because it's a different oil, but it's another fresh oil, just to show again also how we can use this tasting method of determining if it's fresh or not by first smelling it, seeing if we smell something green, and we'll see what you think here in a minute, but hopefully you get something from the garden.
Yeah, I'd say there's a faint grassiness to it.
Okay, that's good.
I don't get a specific herb or anything like that.
Okay. And that's okay, as long as it's green.
Maybe like green tomato.
Green tomato, all right. And a lot of that like gets really subjective when we're naming specifically, right? And that's hard, right? Like you're saying, it's like, oh, I didn't taste the banana until you mentioned it. Like that's all of us, right? It's tricky. And that's why like tasting in a group is so much easier, because it's like, it's hard to pinpoint and to develop skill.
Yeah.
And so like to really simplify, it's just like green. Is it something from outside? All right, cool, right? Green tomato. Grass, the intensity is maybe a little different, but we've got that green kind of check. And this is something like all of you listening at home, like I encourage you, like grab a cup, grab whatever olive oil is accessible to you and like smell it, see if you smell something green. Then let's taste it. And when you're tasting it, the other 2 points that we're looking for is pepper in the finish. And then again, we want, you know, that clean freshness feel left in our mouth. And I'm definitely getting some burn of that pepper here. I don't know about you. Yeah, it hits you and it kind of...
I got the burn. I felt the burn.
It lingered. And it's kind of interesting in this oil. I mean, this is 100% Corniki. So we grow and mill 3 different types of olives: Arbequina, Arbesana, Corniki. All 3 of those olives go into what we call our Truly, which is like our 100% fresh extra virgin olive oil. This is just the Corniki. So like this isn't an oil that we sell or distribute, but it's interesting to taste on its own because of the 3 olives that we mill. This one tends to have the most robust flavor profile, and you can get that because that pepper really kind of hits you. And then there's also like, there's a little hint of bitterness here. Do you get that?
I did, yeah. I was gonna say like almond almost is what I got. Yeah.
Totally. Almond, green almond, both of those I definitely pick up in here. And it's interesting because like have you ever tasted a fresh olive off of a tree?
I have not. It's on my bucket list.
So if it's on your bucket list, you'll quickly like do it once and never want to do it again. Because if anybody has ever done that, it's always like you do it one time and then you're like, okay, I got it. Because they're like so bitter and so astringent. And so like here in this oil, we taste a little of that bitterness still. Bitterness when we taste it in olive oil is not necessarily good or bad, because it just kind of naturally gets carried over from the fruit.
Yeah.
But when we taste the bitterness, like bitterness alone can be not super palatable. We need kind of these aromatics and like things to flesh out that flavor profile. So here's an example where we get the aromas of the grassiness and we also get the pepper. And so it kind of blends in with that bitterness to sort of balance it out.
Yeah.
But overall, can we agree it's another fresh oil?
Yeah, and the mouth feels good too. Like it didn't stay greasy. It wasn't unpleasant for me.
Good.
Yeah, it washed away relatively quickly. It also had that velvety feel. I kind of
Good.
liked it. It just felt kind of like the slightly less, a little more one note than the first one we tasted. But I actually happen to really like bitterness as a flavor, so I kind of dug
Totally.
it, honestly.
I know. A fellow coffee drinker, I can only
Oh
assume.
yeah, black coffee. That's me.
I know, totally. Bitterness is an acquired thing, but I'm here for it for sure, right? But it's kind of definitely you could pick up how it's balanced in there. But yeah, that's cool. Okay, keep this one now in mind.
Okay.
And we're going to compare that to our last one. And so I'm just going to cleanse my palate here again.
I just did too. And I will say, I'll point this out for the listeners because they're not able to see, but you can kind of tell that this is like a starkly different color from all the rest.
Yeah. Yeah. That's your first clue because definitely we're looking at this and you're like, something's different about this one. Color alone doesn't necessarily tell us, good or bad, but it can give us, a piece of the puzzle.
Mhm.
And so that's cool. And so this one, I agree, it's like very golden, very kind of yellow, whereas the other ones have like a greenish cast to them. Is that
Mhm.
right? You
Yeah.
agree?
Yeah, this one's like apple juice.
Yep. Okay. So now let's just go ahead and warm this last one. And then we're going to keep an open mind, but I'm going to disclose that this is not our most delicious oil, but it's important in the context of understanding all of these common flavors that we can come across just with any olive oil, whether it's on our shelf or, on a salad bar at random X, Y, and Z restaurant, right?
Yeah.
It's important to kind of know. And then I always say like life gets more complicated because you tend to find bad olive oil more often than good, but ultimately you're set up for success to find the good stuff and to benefit from it.
Lisa, have you ever tried to play a prank on people who are tasting and tell them that the bad one is the good one and the good one is the bad one to see to see what their reaction is or if they'll just believe you?
Well, and it's funny because like I'm guiding us all through this and I'm like, setting expectations, but like they'll know, like, like whether or not you know what to look for, none of that matters. It's like the first barrier to entry is like, just put your oil in a cup and taste it, right? Because most of us have never done that, right? Like I work primarily with chefs and like the majority have never actually like sat down and tasted their oil because it's kind of just taken for granted, right?
Yeah.
And we don't really recognize the flavors that it adds, good or bad. And so that's really like the first thing that we're just trying to do is like, pay attention. Like we tend to say like olive oil is kind of like this ingredient that Farm to Fork forgot, right? But it's also an ingredient that we all use and we all use it no matter what we're cooking. So yeah, it's usually pretty easy that the prank is like comes to light very quickly. We just know. We know if it's good or we know if it's not,
Yeah, that's really interesting. It's kind of like telling someone to taste their salt. They're like, well, this is just salt. It like just adds
exactly
an element to the dish. It's not something that, but the more you learn, to your point, like the more dangerous it is because not dangerous within quotation marks because you realize how much variety there is when you're using something. So
and then next thing you know, not saying I haven't done this, you're going into the backcountry and you have your finishing salt and you have your kosher salt and whatever, because you know that they're going to affect the end product, a little bit differently.
Yeah.
And yes, I've definitely hiked into the backcountry with olive oil because, you got to be prepared.
You never know. You never know what you might encounter.
Yeah. Okay. So this last oil now is nice and warm. Let's go ahead and smell it.
Ooh.
And so what we want is something green. I don't know. Do you get something green from this last one?
I get tire. I honestly, I get like
tire. Totally.
Yeah. Rubber. Like I get plastic.
Rubber.
Yeah.
Okay. So the rubber plastic is definitely not something that we find in the garden. So right away, we're kind of questioning it, right? But the way this works is we have to have all three. So let's just kind of get a bigger picture of, what's happening here. And we're still going to taste it.
Yeah.
And then see what you notice when you taste it. And probably that rubber just like amplifies as you're tasting it.
It does. I'm getting like anise, like almost like a licoricness to it.
Yeah, that's interesting for sure.
And, I could be generous and say that's fennel, aka something green, but it doesn't taste natural.
No.
And it also, I do get some pepperiness, but it like burns in a different way.
For sure.
And it definitely leaves a bit of a film on my mouth.
Yeah. Like I feel with this oil almost like I put chapstick or something on because it just like really clings to your mouth and kind of it's hard to get it off. And then I really taste like the rubber or like a waxy crayon or like, you know, kind of old fryer oil. Like when you taste it,
Yeah.
it's awful. And you get all of these things that like, whether or not you know how to name them, they're pretty bad, right? And then the burning that you're describing, it's interesting because what we want from a fresh oil is like a bite or a tickle at the top of your throat that like almost makes you have to cough. That comes from harvest fruit. The fruit at that point has these antioxidants that just make their way into the oil and give it that peppery note. Here, it's like a persistent kind of unpleasant burning, which basically is correlated to rancidity. This is a rancid oil, right?
Oh, okay. It feels a little like COVID. I don't know if you ever had COVID, but like it's like where it burns your sinuses. That's kind of what it feels like.
Okay, so not a good thing.
No, definitely not.
Right? So this last oil that we just tasted, like there's no question about it. It's bad. Like it's a rancid oil. There's nothing really redeeming about it. It's flat, it's greasy, it's oily. There's nothing kind of positive, and it's definitely not green.
And you can find it at Trader Joe's. No, I'm just kidding. We're joking. Joking.
No. And so what's interesting here is so this last oil that we tasted is the exact same oil as the oil we tasted right ahead of it. So the one that we tasted that we were commenting that it was, you know, nice and green and it had like green tomato and it definitely had that pepper and it had a well-rounded flavor to it. And we could recognize that it was an oil that came from fall harvest fruit and it still tasted fresh. Now we've tasted the same oil and it just tastes like rubber, right? It tastes awful and it's lingering and it's horrible.
Yeah.
So the big difference here is that how they were stored. They're the exact same oil. They were both made from fall harvest fruit. So we had that first part of the equation. But the big difference is the storage, where the first oil that we tasted that still tasted great, tasted like the fruit that it came from, it tasted fresh. It has been stored, protected from light, heat, and air. So it still tastes good, right? The second oil, it started out tasting great. It was made from fall harvest fruit. You know, it tested as extra virgin right when it's made, but now it's super rancid. What happened? The difference is 5 days of poor storage. Basically, we took the oil out of our casks. We put it in a clear glass bottle. We let it sit outside. So it was exposed to sunlight because it's in clear glass. We took the lid off. It's exposed to air. And then up in Lodi, it's pretty hot these days, right? So for about 5 days with degrees, you know, around like the 90s, 80s, totally torches all of the flavor that's in that oil and it's turned it to a completely rancid oil. Doesn't matter that at one point it was good. It doesn't matter that, you know, all of the best practices were followed and it was at one point tasting great. Now, after 5 days of horrible storage, it's just rancid. And so this is the part that I think is so important because it's easy to forget.
Yeah.
Because a lot of it's, you know, the freshness idea is on the producer and kind of how it's produced and making great olive oil that tastes good to begin with. But then it's only a fresh oil if it still tastes great, you know, when you're using it at home or in your restaurant when you're combining with food.
Yeah.
And that's what it's all about, right? And so that's the reminder to think about how it's stored and like look at, you know, the packaging is kind of your first clue. We put virtually everything we produce in a bag and box for that reason, because it's going to, no sunlight, it's going to permeate. Cardboard's a great insulator. And then you never open the package, you just dispense it. But like if you have a bottle or a tin at home, it's like, think about it like a red wine bottle. You know that when you open it, you're introducing oxygen, and then that's just going to seed the oxidation that's then going to kind of kick off and then, you know, keep it away from light and heat. Because if it's next to light and heat and it's been open, like it's just going to taste like this rancid oil in a couple of days. So
where do you store your olive oil? Like, do you store it in a cupboard? Like what is the best place for storing a nice olive oil?
Yeah, it's a good question. So our roots are in food service. So we started off with like these 10-liter bag and boxes. Obviously, that's not super practical for the home chef. So we do have like a smaller 3-liter bag and box. So that's what I use at home. And I do store it in a cupboard that's kind of like away from the stove because the stove has a lot of kind of ambient heat that comes off of it. And like as much as possible, I try to just dispense from that box. Like if I'm dropping it in a pan, I'll just take the box out and dispense it. But like we all, you know, come across situations where you're going to have to decant that into something else for whatever you're cooking. So like what I do is a tip that I picked up a few years ago. So I actually bought, if you're decanting, a ceramic container is great because there's no sunlight that's going to go through it. And then basically the clay is a really good insulator as well. So I picked up like an oil and vinegar set that I just use both for olive oil and I rotate them. So I'll fill up this carafe and then store it also in the cupboard rather than next to my stove so that it's kept cool. And then I just pull it out as I need it to cook from it. Then when I use up the oil that's in there, I'll wash it, fill the new one, and then kind of continue that cycle. Because if you're always kind of topping something off, eventually that coating inside will oxidize and it'll affect the new oil. So it's all about like
Oh,
use a clean container, right? And then keep it away from heat, away from light, in a cupboard and take
yeah.
it out when you're cooking with it, right? And it's
Yeah.
inconvenient, I
That makes
know,
sense.
but like at the end, it's all about like how it tastes, right? So like, why does all of this matter? It's all about what oil does when it's combined with food. And so that's kind of the homework piece. Like if you think about like bread and olive oil, right? If like say you have a local bakery, they make amazing bread. Like you can pick up a loaf and take a bite and it's going to taste really good. But if you dip it in a fresh olive oil, it's just even better, right? Because you get all the
Yeah.
flavor of the olives, right? And that went into that oil. And then also because it's like a fat, because it has this viscous texture, it just kind of like deepens the experience and you taste more of the nutty notes of whatever it's paired with. It just kind of amplifies the whole experience. And that's really what it's all about. Whereas like if we think about dipping that same baguette in, the last oil we just tasted, this oxidized oil, it's just going to be a totally different experience. And all we're going to taste is the rancid oil, right? So that's kind of why it all
Yeah.
matters sort of in the big picture.
It's rubber toast, you might say.
Yeah.
That's really interesting. I was actually going to ask you about applications for these great olive oils, right? Like, as I mentioned earlier, I've made the mistake of cooking with extra virgin olive oil before, and I know you're not really supposed to at high heats because it has a really low smoke point. I mean, I've heard it's actually can be really bad for you. Like it changes the, what's it called? Chemical composition of the oil, and it has some bad effects for human beings, allegedly. I don't know. Maybe I'm speaking out of turn. And there are other oils that you're supposed to cook at high heat points with. But a good extra virgin olive oil like the one from Corto, how can I best use it in my kitchen as a home chef?
Yeah, no, good question. This was a point you raised at the beginning I wanted to come back to. So like olive oil has a slightly lower smoke point than a lot of kind of nut and seed and refined olive oils. But if it's a fresh olive oil, it's pretty hot, right? Like if you look at places like Spain, like they fry things in olive oil all the time, right? Like if it's a fresh olive oil, it can hold up to heat around like 400 degrees, which is like in a home kitchen, like you're never really going to go above that. And that's because when it's a fresh oil, basically the free fatty acid level is low and that correlates to a high smoke point. So a lot of this sort of misnomer that you can't cook with olive oil and that it has a really low smoke point goes back to like, let's just think about like the landscape of olive oil in the US. Like we've already talked about how like 70% of what's sold as extra virgin, which is meant to mean that it's high quality, is actually low quality. We just don't know the difference, right? And we're sort of taken advantage of in that respect. A lot of these tests on smoke point were done on oils that said they were extra virgin, but they were actually a lower grade. And that's a lot of where that comes from. So like a high quality oil, that's a fresh oil, it has these polyphenols in there. They're antioxidants. They help to stabilize it, right? And so it'll kind of stay totally solid for pretty much any application in the kitchen. So
Wow.
like I use olive oil to fry my eggs, right? Like I use it. It's more a question of like the flavor, right? Because when you're heating it, like much when we're heating it to taste, the heating is going to release some of those aromas.
Yeah.
So when you're cooking your food in that oil, some of those aromas are absorbed by the food, kind of lending flavor. But then some are also kind of released into the atmosphere and you might lose them. And so that's why oftentimes, like if you have a very special bottle or an oil that's like super expensive, you're not going to want to cook with it because you want to just kind of like reserve that for applications where you're going to get the total full flavor profile. But you absolutely can. And in fact, I like totally encourage it. And like baking is really fun with olive oil, right?
Yeah.
So like a kind of like a shortcut that I'll do at home is like chocolate and olive oil is like one of my favorite combinations. You can make like an olive oil and chocolate truffle, or you can just like whip up your next batch of brownies with olive oil. And like, you'll notice that like those flavors and aromas kind of come through.
Oh, wow.
But like, all kinds of things, like pouring it over like any kind of dip, whether it's like a yogurt dip or if you have like a hummus or like pasta dishes. Like I was talking to a chef the other day and she was saying like, I was asking her, why do you use olive oil? Why do you have these olive oils for finishing every single plate before it goes out? And she was saying that like, on dishes with, fish or like a crudo dish, that it just adds flavor and it changes the mouthfeel. And then with pastas where you have, maybe like a citrus and then also like a cheese, it's kind of like the binder that kind of binds all of these flavors together and kind of brings its own flavor to the mix. So like I say, use it for everything, use it as like a condiment, just cook simple proteins, take them off the grill, do kind of like a reverse marinade where you're going to like toss it with the olive oil and your herbs, and you're going to keep all that flavor and savor it, when you're eating it. And then play around with some sweet applications too, like, ice cream, as we mentioned earlier, which is amazing with great oil.
Yeah, that's so exciting. I've been reserving the good stuff, the Corto stuff for like finishing applications. So we made like really good like seared salmon over like asparagus, pea, mint, like a very spring dish, and we finished it with the truly olive oil.
Yeah.
And then I had the idea to use it as the condiment for just my sandwich one day. Like literally I went to the Italian deli in Eagle Rock.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I got fresh loaf of bread. I got mortadella. I got some provolone, and I just finished it with a bunch of the your guys' lemongrass basil olive oil, and it was insane. Like that was an
Nice.
awesome
Yeah.
sandwich. A little bit of salt, and that was a really cool way to do it. But now I'm gonna experiment with cooking as well. Why not?
I mean, it's totally true. Yeah, like BLTs. I actually had a BLT earlier, a blat, technically, right? I think it is when you put avocado on it.
Yeah.
But then the olive oil, a little bit of sea salt, and it's so delicious. But yeah, it's fun to play around with it. And like I say, let all of your barriers down, because it's a delicious product. It's a healthy product, and like use it for everything.
Yeah.
It can be expensive, right? But like really, the Corto is neck and neck, and like it's all about the flavor and kind of the end game. So I'm having fun with it.
So obviously Corto is a California olive oil.
Yep.
It's just funny because like, my mother-in-law, whenever she wants to give us like an expensive gift or a luxurious gift for the holidays, she's like,
Yep.
here's a fancy bottle of olive oil from Sicily or Italy or other places of Italy or, Spain. I'm guessing it's similar to wine, but in terms of like quality and sort of, what they're known for, what is the broad strokes difference between getting an olive oil from a place like Italy or Spain versus one made in California?
Broad strokes, if we're comparing, two olive oils from farms that are focused on quality, they're making the olive oil from fall harvest fruit. We know it's a great olive oil to begin with. It's really about the supply chain, right? And how it has to travel to get to you, right? And that's another reason why having like a domestic olive oil is, to me personally, so exciting, is like it kind of just goes along with all of the other kind of locavore movements of like, we know olive oil is fresh is best. We know it's super perishable, right? So like there's amazing olive oils made in Spain and Italy, but they have to come across an ocean to get to us, right? And so like, are they temperature controlled that whole time? Like what kind of goes into that? So like a few years ago, I spent like far too much money on a bunch of oils that I was bringing over through like a reputable company that was importing them, and they were going to, air freight them, bring them over, and I was going to taste them like right after their harvest finished. They were like coming in November, and they got caught in customs, and they sat in customs for like 2 to 3 weeks. And by the time they came to me, I tasted them, and they were oils that I know had been fabulous, but like, they just got stuck in the whole kind of importing process in the supply chain. And you could tell that they had oxidized and they had started that rancidity process. So like, really, like California is kind of like the new world, and sort of like the farming techniques that we're using to produce quality are a little bit different. That's not something that you could taste in the end product. It's all about just capturing the best flavor of that fruit and having it be fresh for the end user. And it's mostly about, where can you get the freshest product? That's why I choose to buy my fish, locally, just because I know that, it's the freshest option for me. And so that's really, I think, the big difference.
Oh my God, the amount of Sicilian olive oil bottles that I wish I had tasted just to know if it had been rancid or not. Instead, I just cooked with it. Oh my God, if only I had known. That's really interesting, really interesting. And hey, I said this, but our listeners don't often learn much on this podcast. And today I think they've learned a lot. I also wanted to quickly know, like, what is training? Like, is there like a sommelier school equivalent for olive oil?
Yeah, no, that's a good question. So like with wine, like there are sort of like governing bodies and, tests and protocols for the different levels and things like that. It's kind of a Wild West frontier with olive oil, right? But there are definitely different, certifying bodies. So like I got a lot of my experience working with the California Olive Oil Council. Kind of a part of that role was we had and maintained a sensory panel for certifying all of our members olive oil. And so they would meet weekly, right? And I was able to kind of taste along with that panel go through different sort of apprentice training programs and things like that. And then there's like organizations, like there's one called ONAO, ONAOO. I'm going to have to look that one up, but it's an acronym that's in Italy, and that's like all they do is kind of like educate and certify. And there's lots of different kind of bodies around there. I'd say if you're interested, just Google it, right? Or maybe, start off and we'll introduce you with the toolkit and we'll taste together, and then we can kind of talk about next steps from there. But UC Davis also has a pretty robust education programming where they tend to offer kind of entry-level sensory analysis classes, and then also a more advanced class, which I've taken, which is really great as well. So it's kind of, it's an industry fueled by passion, right? It's kind of like where the wine industry was in California maybe 30 years ago, where like for a while it was like, like it wasn't taken seriously that California was producing olive oil. And now we've kind of, earned our chops, and now we're, winning all kinds of international awards. And so it's a really exciting time. And it's a lot of what's kind of kept me in this industry, is that it's super fun. Everybody uses olive oil. Everybody's confused by it. So I'm happy to be able to kind of like, connect those dots and like talk about food, which is my real passion, right? So.
Well, Lisa, you've been so generous with your time. I just wanted to say thank you on behalf of all of our LA Food Pod listeners for taking the time to walk us through this awesome tasting and teaching us so much. If people are interested in learning more about Corto, about olive oil, where would you send them?
Awesome. Thank you, Luca. And thanks again for this opportunity. I'd say check out our website. So Corto-olive.com. And there, if you're a professional chef, restaurateur, you can sign up for a complimentary virtual tasting and we can connect. If you're not a professional, there's still an opportunity to do the virtual tasting, and you can find that on the website. And thank you all for making space in your day to celebrate olive oil. We appreciate it.
And buy good olive oil, folks. Okay. Well, thanks, Lisa. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Luca.
Thanks for listening to another episode of the LA Food Podcast. Thanks as always to Father Saul for making the time to join us. And thanks to our guest, Lisa Pollack, for calling in and leading quite the awesome olive oil tasting. Seriously, go and find Corto olive oil wherever it's available. You will not regret it. Thanks also to Adam Skaggs, Tim Bertolini, and Tiffany Perez for helping to produce this episode. If you like what you heard today, dear listener, please go to wherever you listen to podcasts, leave us a rating, a review, subscribe. Seriously, all that stuff really helps. We'll be back next week with one of the most epic episodes we've ever had in the history of the LA Food Podcast. You're not going to want to miss it. If you're looking for us in the meantime, though, you can find us on TikTok, Instagram, Threads, YouTube, and even our website at the LA Countdown. That's TheLACOUNTDOWN. The website is thelacountdown.com. Also, don't forget to subscribe to our free newsletter where you'll be able to find all of the links that we discussed in today's episode. It's called LA Food Stack, and it's linked in the show notes. See you next week.